Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. Today we are going to be going over the top 5 Zacian counters. With no further ado, let's get right into it. So, pretty much when we look at Zacian, Zacian is a pretty strong Pokemon overall. We can even pull up Pikalytics here, I guess, right? And kind of look at Zacian. Zacian is everywhere. It is a 60% usage mon. I would even wager to bet that it could be a little bit more, or I'd even like wager it could be a bit more, right? So that's kind of like a really solid thing about it. Now, what's really interesting, and this is where I think you'll see the usage is a little outdated, Zacian is typically running with a lot of other partners now. As the meta has progressed, we've seen that there are a lot of things that support Zacian pretty well. So obviously, with this list of top 5 Zacian counters / checks, whatever, pretty much the one thing you want to keep in mind is that obviously certain partners can deal with them, right? And you're going to need to make sure that you have a good way to deal with those Pokemon. So that's just kind of a disclaimer there, because obviously any counter can be beaten by another Pokemon, right? Like, that's not up for debate. But yeah, some honorable mentions I wanted to give, by the way, before we get further into the list, or like before we get into the list, I should say. So I wanted to put Charizard, and I wanted to put Calyrex Shadow as a kind of check to Zacian. So Charizard's more of a direct counter. However, my main issue with Charizard is that it's only really great on Sun teams, and it requires kind of a lot of support. And Zacian can still chunk it for a bunch of damage with the Behemoth Blade, which is true of like other Pokemon, but there's usually like ways to mitigate that with the other Pokemon that we're going to be discussing. So we're going to be going through that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So first Pokemon I wanted to talk about is actually going to be Landorus. This is our number 5. Number 5, basically, Landorus is a really solid pick for kind of being a strong check to Zacian, I'd say. Mostly because it's accompanied by screens, right? So we're kind of looking at these Pokemon as like kind of a holistic thing as opposed to like, you know, just one specific facet of, you know, kind of how the Pokemon functions, right? Because obviously, if a Zacian gets in on a Lando and it's not intimidated, you know, it's probably just going to get one shot unless it's like bulky. So the one thing to keep in mind here is basically with Landorus in general, Landorus with the Life Orb set does a really good job at like pinning Zacian, but the reason why it's number 5 is because a lot of Zacian's partners can deal with it, right? It is a little bit susceptible to intimidate, and also too, you know, you need to get intimidated at the right time. But the combination of intimidate plus really strong ground coverage gives you a lot to pressure Zacian. It's a super solid option in a lot of situations. Landorus in general is really good. You can even bring it into Zacian Ogre teams as long as you have enough to compensate for the Kyogre. And typically you'll see Landorus paired with Gastrodon, which is like a really strong core together, especially for dealing with Zacian. And that's kind of the main thing there. Speaking of Gastrodon, I guess we may as well cover this at the same time. Gastrodon's actually going to be our number 4 as well. So Gastrodon and Landorus, the reason why I'm putting them together is because they kind of go hand in hand, right? So like for 5 and 4, like these two are very typically used together because of the way they cover each other. Landorus having Intimidate to kind of support the Gastrodon, Gastrodon having Storm Drain to protect the Landorus. It's just overall a really solid kind of way to deal with Zacian as a whole, right? And you'll notice that these Pokemon are seen on a lot of teams together because they kind of form the backbone of like, you know, the overall like pivotty and like kind of what I mean by pivotty is like swapping in the Zacian hits, like reducing the damage, getting pressure on it with ground type moves or getting pressure on it with super effective moves. There's a lot there, right? So it just makes it like really interesting in that regard. So that's kind of the main thing I would keep in mind there, right? Now, when it comes to overall how you would see Gastrodon, I guess, interact with Zacian. So at first, if it's play rough Zacian, you will need an Intimidate or Reflect Up to be in a good situation. However, Gastrodon does have the ability to max, which can allow you to put a good amount of pressure on. So that's definitely something that will challenge your opponent specifically in trying to really deal with a bunch of stuff. But yeah. So that's pretty much it for Gastrodon. Gastrodon gets a bevy of moves: Recover, Yawn. You can Yawn opposing Zacian. You can Yawn partners. You know, you can Yawn the Kyogre that's typically accompanying the Zacian. You have a lot of options there. And like Max Quake in general is just really strong because typically it lets you deal with not only Zacian, but the partner next to Zacian as well. So just kind of a cool combination there. That's going to be our number 4. Then for number 3, it's going to be Incineroar. So these, I'm going to say these 3 like really go hand in hand. So you'll notice like a lot of teams use Landorus Gastro or like Incin Gastro mostly because of Storm Drain, and like this makes like opposing team Zacian matchup even harder. Typically on a lot of teams you'll see like multiple checks or like counters for Zacian, so specifically like it can't really do that much, and it can be like really disruptive for the Pokemon, right? So that's kind of the main idea there. Overall, I would say that Incineroar is probably the better one out of the Intimidators, and like this is where you start getting into the realm where like this Pokemon can kind of hold up its own, even without support from other partners. So for Incineroar, right, like you literally pivot it in, and if you swap it on Behemoth Blade and like you have enough defense investment, you could take a follow-up Sacred Sword, Flare Blitz back, you could go for a Parting Shot. Like Incineroar is really good at disrupting it with like Fake Out, you know, you get the Intimidate, Parting Shot, Flare Blitz potential. There's just a lot you can do there. And Incineroar is just super, super good at checking Zacian. Obviously, typically you'll want like another partner. Typically, I would say you want like at least 2 Zacian checks per team. That's usually kind of the general benchmark. I mean, obviously, it varies based on like what your team is. So, yeah. But pretty much like Incineroar, you know, just gets a bevy of options. I mean, you get the option of obviously getting those like fast intimidates down. You know, you get the fast fake out, not really fast fake out, but like fake out. You know, you can kind of stop it from moving. And then you have you know, the ability to pivot out. You can even call turns where they protect and hard swap out your Incin, swap back into something that you have in the back that will still match up well versus the board, and then swap back Incineroar next turn, right? So just a lot of good options there. Incineroar is super flexible. It's kind of a backbone to a lot of defensive teams, along with like Landorus. So just a cool option overall. So the next option, we're kind of getting into the realm where like these Pokemon directly kill Zacian, and Zacian has a really hard time breaking them. So for number 2, I wanted to cover Zapdos. So Zapdos obviously is typically used in tandem with like Incineroar, right? Incineroar kind of, you know, intimidating, not really giving the opponents a good way to get a lot of damage off if they want to. And the combination of Incineroar and Zapdos actually is really oppressive to Zacian. It can really shut it down. And Dynamax Zapdos like actually demolishes Zacian, right? Like you can go for a Max Flare and it does so much damage. If they hit you with Behemoth Blade, Sacred Sword, like Play Rough, anything on a swap in, like they can get hit with Static, and Zacian's speed is like its biggest asset. Zapdos is just kind of one of those mons in the territory. Like once you get an Intimidate on that Zacian, like it's not going to be doing anything to Zapdos, right? As long as you like have your max preserved. So Zapdos is one of those Pokemon that's like super strong. It's just a really good Pokemon in the format. Zapdos in general, I have a video coming out tomorrow on the team I used to win, or like talking about my tournament run. Team I used to win a really big high roller tournament, or like big high roller tournament in terms of money. It was like $50 entry fee, and I had used Zapdos, and it was like incredibly strong. I played a bunch of Zacian, right? So just a really good Pokemon overall, just super cool. Also, too, the one interesting thing to keep in mind, I think, with the overall like construction of most teams with Zapdos, like you also have screens that accompany it as well, along with like Thunder Waves. So it's like really outspeeding everything. It's getting a ton of damage down. You can even run the bulky Eerie Impulse set, which could also take hits pretty decently. It's a really good answer to like the Zacian Ogre composition. So like because of all that damage and like pretty much speed, everything, like you can really utilize this Pokemon to great success versus Zacian and its partners. So that's why it's so high on the list. Now, number 1, I want to clarify, very interchangeable with Zapdos in my opinion. Number 1's actually gonna be Rotom Heat. Now, the reason why I rate Rotom Heat so highly, and like it's kind of half and half with Zapdos, like in terms of like which one could be first. Rotom Heat is really, really good in the Thunder Zacian, which is like the number 1 Zacian thing right now, right? Like obviously Zapdos Zacian is really good too, but like Rotom like matches up well into like Thunder Zacian, which is one of the like bigger archetypes right now. It can go for Will-O-Wisp to burn Zacian. It can immediately go for a Max and try and kill it. It has enough defense where it can literally just sit there in front of Zacian. The only thing you have to be careful of is because of its low HP stat, out of Max, you can really get chunked pretty hard with Rotom. Now, I want to clarify, as I said, these guys are kind of interchangeable. I would even consider putting Zapdos before, but like the main thing with Rotom, right, is like Rotom is basically just has that perfect typing to resist Behemoth Blade, which lets it swaps in pretty comfortably. And it also pairs really nicely with 2 other Gastrodon checks, which is why I think it's rated so highly, which is Landorus and Groudon, or Landorus and Gastrodon, sorry. I didn't know why I thought this was Groudon, but pretty much Landorus, Gastrodon, Rotom is like the perfect anti-Zacian core because you get Intimidate, you have 2 Pokemon that kind of just sit in front of it, something that directly pressures it, you're reducing damage with Will-O-Wisp, you have Nasty Plot, potential setup, immediate burst damage with like Life Orb Lander. So just like that core in general works really well together, and you could argue the same for like Zapdos, Incineroar, and like Grimmsnarl. So that's why I'm kind of like putting them equal to each other. But yeah, that's like the main thing. Rotom's just a super good option. It can pretty much wall Zacian as long as it's not getting hit by like a Sacred Sword without like an Intimidate on the Zacian or something. It's a really good Pokemon. I actually think Rotom Heat, like, I'm glad it has this chance to shine. The one thing you have to be careful of that is worth noting is you are pretty weak to opposing Kyogre unless, like, you have a Thunder Wave on them and you can change the weather to benefit you. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? But that's where, like, the partners kind of shine. So that's just kind of the interesting thing, I think, about, you know, Rotom and just, like, all these Pokemon. It's kind of cool to, like, talk about all the Pokemon and kind of summarize it for you guys. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the top 5 checks, you know. If you guys have any questions or you guys have any disagreements, you know, feel free to leave it down below. Also, make sure to let me know what you guys would like to see next. I have a video coming out tomorrow on the team I used to win the money tournament that I played in. Made a nice, like, $420, so that was kind of cool. And if you guys would like to improve your skills, make sure to check out coaching where you guys can book a session with me and I will work on you personally to improve your skills, especially before the regionals coming up. And also to make sure to check out the Patreon where you guys can support me beyond there. I like to post some tips up there for certain events or just post like teams that I use for tournaments immediately after I finish them. So thank you guys so much for all the support. I incredibly appreciate it. And I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.